Hey there everybody, what's up? Kevin here from the My Song of the Day Rock 2000 to Today YouTube channel. And today I'm going to be reviewing this new album from a punk band out of New York City that I have come to really enjoy. And I got it early, so I'm super excited. This is our review of Ghost in the Shadows by Rebelmatic. Before we get started, please follow My Song of the Day Rock 2000 today on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you get the 30-second Song of the Day preview every single day. You get the notice on when any videos come out, any podcasts come out, anytime anything gets released. It's also a great way to connect with us as we try and answer every single thing you guys comment to us and ask us. And on Instagram, we have our Instagram live streams every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central. For an hour, you come talk to us, just have a blast. It's always free form, whatever the heck happens. And then our IGTV series, which is every Tuesday night. It's behind the scenes look at what's happening here. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel because not only do you get these videos every single Wednesday night, these album reviews, we also do the Kevin Figures Out series where I try and figure out if I like a certain band or not that I'm not really that well versed in, or the top 10 lists, or just all the stuff about the emerging bands in the scene today. So it's great to get to know them. Speaking of emerging bands in the scene, please subscribe to the Chord Progression podcast because that's the podcast where you're unearthing all the emerging bands in the rock and metal scene today for you guys. We go in depth with them on their stories, in depth especially on their music, and you get to know them before they make it to the big time. So you can brag to your friends and be like, hey, I knew them before you did. You can watch the interviews here on our YouTube channel, or you can stream it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Links in the description below for everything, but let's get on to it. So a little bit of background on Rebelmatic before we get started. The band was founded over a decade ago with two albums coming out, one in 2009, one in 2015. Since their inception, they've become a prominent member of the punk rock scene on the East Coast of the United States. On June 3rd of 2020, they released their first single, Insult to Injury, which was not supposed to be their first single. However, they picked it for this one due to its themes of race in America, and it was the perfect time to release it following the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests. I was able to speak with Creature, their frontman, on the Chord Progression podcast after finding out about the band through an alt press article. We had some fun times on there because the first time we tried getting on there, while the audio would connect, second time we succeeded. We're on for an hour. We had to jump off because his phone was about to explode. Yeah, it almost overheated. It was, well, we got everything in though, so I was pretty happy about that. Creature was able to tell me that this new album, Ghost Shadows, was coming out on August 28th. And one thing he did say about this album, though, on that podcast was that no song was going to sound the same because they have so many different influences in with their punk rock sound that it's going to be a very dynamic album and very diverse album. So let's get into it and let's see how they did. So let's start with the composition, construction, and instrumentation on this album. Like I said earlier, Creature was talking about how their punk rock bass on this album was going to be infused with many of their other influences going forward. And I'm concerned about this one going forward as well, due to the fact that this is a huge task to undertake. There have been bands in the past that have tried to do this by taking sounds in their bass and sounds and other influences in other genres as well and blend them together that are unlike each other. And there's a lot of times where, I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't work. However, there are times where it does work, but this is a huge task for Rebelmatic to undertake, and the question is, did they achieve this? And the answer is 100% yes. When you take a listen to Rebelmatic songs on Ghost in the Shadows, you're going to hear that punk rock bass in every single song, but you're going to hear many other different influences in those as well. Including influences from hip-hop, from jazz, from funk, to hard rock, to heavy metal, to ska. I mean, it's all over the place. And because the band absolutely loves a lot of other sounds just outside of punk rock, it makes sense why these all are in there. But the key is they fit them in so well and blend them so well because they're able to match these certain styles and their punk rock bass with a couple of different attributes. They understand the construction behind them, so they're able to match different pacings, different guitar tones, different drum fills, and different vocal patterns, more on that later, to really create a dynamic album where they're saying that yes, not every song is gonna sound the same, but every song doesn't sound the same. However, they blend those styles very well. So let's take a look at a couple examples for you guys to find out about why this is. First example is their second single, Blood and Gold. And when I think about this one, they take their punk bass and mix it with like an 80s punk style that has a lot of energy behind it, very rapid drumming that's very heavy on the snare, very prominent on the snare, but it gives this amped up feeling of the song. It's high energy and it's high punk rock. So it's like their style mixed with the Dead Kennedys, and Hey, that's always a good comparison. Another example is p.o.n.y, or People of New York, where this reminded me of their punk style with like a mix of 90s ska punk. What I mean by that is you take a listen guitar and it's going to have this rougher distortion to it like it does on punk rock, but it's going to have this little bit faster pace and lighter feel to it like ska punk did in the 90s. And this is very prominent as well because when you take a look at the call and response style of the chorus on this one, they perfectly differentiate the call with more of like a guitar and drum oriented style, and then with the response with just a drum oriented style. So it really brings out that prominence, brings out that energy, and it's a great mixture here. Emergency Brake is probably the most incredible song on this album because they mix this funk sound, which you can clearly hear right from the intro because it has this funk guitar feel, in with their punk rock bass. And why this absolutely works is because they have the punk rock sound to it, but they're able to take their punk rock bass and match it with the flow and consistency that funk would have. And it just creates this great blend of an overall song and overall style that you can really get into and see that this band is completely dynamic throughout the course of this album. So when it comes to the composition, construction, and instrumentation on Ghost in the Shadows, damn, they did good. Now it's time to go into the vocals specifically from Creature on this album, and with all the different stylings, all the different influences that the band has with their punk rock bass, they mix it with these sounds that they did so well. It's going to be up to Creature to find a vocal style and a vocal pattern that really matches and amplifies these throughout so that these songs continue to excel and they don't fall flat. So, where do you lie on this? Overall, Creature's vocal patterns and vocal style were absolutely incredible in matching up with what the composition, construction, and instrumentation of each song needed. When I listen to Creature's vocals, his rougher style and cleaner style reminds me of LeJean Witherspoon from Seven Dust if he tried to go punk rock, so I do like the sound overall. But where Creature really shines on this is his understanding of different vocal patterns, because he's using different vocal patterns, different vocal progressions throughout each song, but why he does that is to maximize the influences that are on that song in order to amplify the song overall and really create something incredibly unique, incredibly powerful, and incredibly punk rock all at the same time. So, let's look at some examples so you guys get a feel for it. Take a look at a song like Born to Win, where I'm looking at Creature's vocals, and what he does is he keeps it clean, but he has this certain hip-hop flow to it as well, which kind of amplifies the energy of the song. This is where his vocal pattern specifically is the driving force behind the influence, because it kind of reminds me of their punk rock sound mixed with something like Rage Against the Machine or Fever 333. So that flow really did work out well here, and this all comes from Creature's vocals. It all comes from that pattern. Now let's go to Insult to Injury, where he goes with this much rougher style, but again, when I said LeJean Witherspoon, but punk rock style, this is kind of where it goes. However, how it matches with the influence on the song is it's much more drawn out, it's much more flowing. It kind of has this jazz influence to it, so it just has this really nice consistent flow throughout the whole entire thing. It's really incredible to listen to because it really amplifies the message of the song, especially when you're watching the music video. Now take a look at a song like Pinky Promise, where Creature mainly keeps it clean on this one, but his vocal pattern reminds me a lot of what Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters would do on theirs. And why I like it is because Creature keeps his more punk rock style vocals, which keeps the song rooted in those punk rock stylings that Rebelmatic has. However, using that certain style of vocal pattern like Dave Grohl would use, it gives a little bit more of a lighter, a more fun, more playful feel at the same time as well. And it really does amplify the song to give it more of a vibe that it's not as rough as some of these others. So you're really getting different feels throughout the whole entire thing, and Creature's vocals and his vocal patterns are a huge part of this. So his vocal performance on this one was like the composition, construction, instrumentation from this one. I gotta give it 2 thumbs up. Now we're going to focus on the themes of this album and how the stylings of songs really amplify those themes and if they work together in perfect harmony. When I dove deep into this album trying to find the themes, it seems like the band is talking about their experiences growing up in America today as African Americans. So they're talking about things that affect them daily, such as police shootings and police brutality, such as racism, and if you watch the Insult to Injury video, you're really going to feel this. And then things like problems within their communities with kids growing up, so kids can grow up in a safe environment. They're talking about that and they're trying to advocate for that. They also advocate for a lot of other things as well that are a lot more centered towards the whole entire human population, but they'll center on things that are more specific to themselves as well. So do the stylings of songs really work with these themes? And the answer to that question is absolutely they do. They hit the nail on the head with their styles and how they match with the theme. And the reason why I think that is because when you think of punk rock at its base, it's always anti-establishment. It's always been something where you're going against the current government or current societal pressures. So you're freely talking about that and you're freely expressing yourself through those themes. And yes, it is in this album. But where Rebelmatic stands out over the rest and why these themes are much more prevalent to them and why it stands out is because they're taking their personal feelings and their personal likenesses to certain kinds of styles that are all across the board and mixing their music, so you're creating this own sound. And when they're being honest and talking about their experiences and putting it in with their unique sound, I mean, it's a win-win no matter what. You can't lose on this one. It just makes a lot of sense. Alright, now it's time for my overall rating on Ghost in the Shadows by Rebelmatic, and that is... I'm going to give Ghost in the Shadows an impressive 8 out of 10. So 8 out of 10 is pretty dang good. Let's go through the likes on this album and what I liked about it specifically. When you take a look at how the composition of this album was constructed with their punk rock base, but mixing in so many other different styles and feelings on songs, I mean, they really do work out well here. And the reason for that is because, again, like I said, they're able to match pacings, match guitar tones, match drum fills, and match vocal patterns, which we'll get to later. But when they do that, they're able to create all these great songs that have a different feel to them. Take a look at a song like Fire This Time, where it has like this skate punk feel, where you're going to feel like this is a punk rock song that perfectly belongs on the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 soundtrack. Take a look at Blood and Gold, where you're going to get that 80s punk inspiration in with their punk style. Also, you're going to have a faster, high energy pace like a Dead Kennedy song would. Then you go to a song that like Insult to Injury, where it has this more jazz influence in the background to create this more melodic approach to it, which is perfect for that song. Then you take a look at a song like Born to Win with Creature's vocals and how they create this more hip-hop inspiration as well. And then Emergency Break, where they mix funk and punk. I mean, if funk punk isn't a thing yet, then Rebelmatic completely created it with this song, because they match the melodies and they match the pacings of these styles perfectly to create a funky punk rock song. So when Creature said, yeah, all these songs are going to sound different because of all these different influences, he was right. One thing I liked about this album is the vocal performance from Creature, especially his vocal patterns, because he was able to understand that his vocal patterns were also going to help amplify and elevate these songs when it comes to mixing in their influences in with their punk rock bass. And he did a great job of that, because sometimes he was the driving force. Like, take a look at a song like Born to Win, where his vocal pattern was rooted in hip-hop and he drove that influence on there as well. Take a look at songs like Pinky Promise and Avenger, where he used a cleaner style through those, but his vocal styling and pattern reminded me of Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighters. So it kept that punk rock energy to it, but also had a more lighter and more playful kind of tone to it as well, where it wasn't going to take itself too seriously. And then again, Emergency Break, where he matches the pacing so well between punk and funk that creates just one great song to end the album on. I mean, he killed it on this. One of the big things I liked about this album was the inclusion of the Insult to Injury video, because you watch that video. I've talked to Creature about this on the Chord Progression podcast. He said his mindset for the video was a man walking home being chased by someone who was going after him based on his race, most likely someone like a Klansman, and then the guy having enough fit and basically knocking him out. And why I like that music video's inclusion, because when you listen to the song on top of it with that smoother kind of jazz inspiration to it to really create this like nice melodic flow to their punk rock sound, and Creature's more scratchy, rough vocals, it really brings out a lot more rootedness to what the video is trying to portray in that long shot format. It really does well. So I'm a big fan of it. So now I'm going to go to the dislike section. Was there something I really didn't like on this album? And if there's one thing I didn't like on this album, but you're going to have to hear me out for the context on this one, so don't jump to conclusion, is the song Get It Off. And why I didn't like this one was because it just had a little bit more of a bland sound to it compared to the rest. And the guitar work was consistent throughout the whole entire thing, and there were some interesting drum fills in there, and Creature had this like kind of grungy inspiration to his vocal pattern, which was cool itself, so it did have a different feel to it. But overall, the composition of it just felt a little bit bland to me. However, this is me being nitpicky, and this is me saying it's bland in comparison to the other 9 songs on the track, which were incredibly dynamic as well. So I always try and point out a thing I might dislike on this album just to kind of show parity, and this is me being more nitpicky on this one. So I still enjoyed the song, but overall, again, this is going to be my least favorite song out of the 10 that are on this album. That's why it's the only thing in the dislike section. Now it's time for my final thought. When it comes to this album, when Creature said that this album is going to be full of songs that are completely different from each other because there are going to be so many different influences in with their punk bass, I was nervous going into it. I'm not going to lie, because I have seen it succeed, but I've seen it fail more than it has succeeded. Thankfully, they were the rarity that this completely succeeded throughout the whole entire thing. Then the reason is because they are incredibly intelligent when it comes to matching different styles up together and figuring out how they're going to do it, what's a common denominator for how these styles are going to work, and how can we bring them together. They did it incredibly well with so many different influences, from jazz to funk to rock to metal to hip hop, that it really does work out incredibly well. On top of that, Creature's vocals also use different vocal patterns to maximize it at the same time as well. And it creates a great punk rock sound that has a lot of different feels to it, a lot of great energy, and overall I was incredibly happy with this album. I was actually blown away by it with the fact that, I mean, I've seen that mixture go bad, but this did not go bad at all. It was incredible. I'm really happy that they made this album. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it, and yeah, comes out on August 28th, so go stream it. Links are in the description for you guys to stream that as well, from anything from Rebelmatic, for this album, for the Insult to Injury video, for the Blood and Gold video as well. So get ready for that, and I'll include their socials as well for you guys to follow. So please go follow Rebelmatic, please follow us, please subscribe us, please dislike this video, whatever you guys want to do, because it's your choice. Please comment as well, and that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys for watching. This is Kevin from the My Song Day Rock 2015 Day YouTube channel, and you guys know I'm going to end this video with the hat flip. It didn't come anywhere near my head, but see ya!